We have seen the rise in the last few years or decade of far-right parties. In the UK, we've got Reform UK gaining popularity. There's far-right parties now building in Germany, France, Italy. I guess some would say that now some of that is maybe more mainstream, or the views of those people. There's a reason why they're voting for these. It's a significant population of people. Could you maybe steelman the case, or could you talk about why do you think there is more people voting for these parties? Is it actually some of their concerns are legitimate, or are they construed in some way? Is it a failure of mainstream governments? Why do you think we're seeing a rise of this and people being concerned with migration?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far outside my expertise, because I'm not a political scientist that looks about electoral behaviour and things. Yeah. So, but I'll kind of
touch on it if we can.
Do my best to think that through. In everything, the narrative is that what is happening is brand new. So a hostile politics of immigration is not new in the UK, right? We know that. So we can look back many decades to how has British citizenship and immigration policy evolved. So when do you get the first people being smuggled across the channel? You get it in 1968, in the late 60s, because people from India, Pakistan, other places who had just been entering with appropriate passports suddenly had a border saying you can't. And so you get people smuggling themselves across and using the same kinds of routes that people use today. And that's when the Cross-Channel Intelligence Committee formed with police from France and the UK to stop smuggling. That's when they first started. So there have always been strong anti-immigration currents, and that's always been mainstream in British politics, I think. And it's always tricky for me to think about, because a lot of my work has looked across history. Yes. And so from my point of view, immigration politics across the whatever party's in power, it's always been on the far right. The conversation is always on the far right. It's always towards the most racist, dehumanizing policy approach. But I think that these particular parties have been successful in recent years because of a number of things. So there is certainly a very well-organized transnational movement of far-right organisers who are relatively well-funded, and there's really good research about this, about the transnational far-right and how they're successfully mobilizing on so people now don't get their political education from trade unions, that we should all form a international working class revolution or whatever. They get their political education from YouTube and TikTok and things, that that those platforms are run by the right, and that they are the far right have been really, really successful in using those technologies to spread their kind of political opinions. I think that's definitely a strong phenomenon that's happened. There have then been different things that have happened in different countries. Like in the UK, the Brexit vote certainly unleashed a strong anti-immigration discussion. Yeah. And even though Brexit had little effect on asylum as an issue, the Syrian refugee crisis in mainland Europe, which we were really marginal to, but became, because of the Farage in front of that big sign kind of thing. So I think that helped to mainstream a set of conversations by Nigel Farage and colleagues, which pulled far-right ideas and further into the mainstream. I think as academics, for a really long time, up to around that period, we anticipated a crisis of capitalism where there would necessitate a backlash against the sucking of money up to elites, increasing inequality and, precarity and all of these things, and fewer jobs, international divisions of labour where manufacturing jobs had gone elsewhere, so that big companies can make more money by having outsourced labour and everything. We expect a backlash from that. We didn't, but until in the period after the financial crisis and leading up to Brexit, I think around Brexit, we didn't expect the backlash to come from the far right. Okay. And this is currently, since in many countries, the left is in decline and the centre left is always on the right on immigration. Yes. So the backlash against the unfairnesses and the destruction of our lives through capitalism, the far right are the only actors with a political voice speaking loudly in an organised way across all of these platforms about what's happening to your life. There's no jobs. There's how is society falling apart? And why is your child's school falling apart? And why is there no doctors in the hospital? And blah, 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 blah. And for them, migration is like a core part of the answer, a core part of the problem. And so I think that they are then able to present immigration as an important part in the puzzle in understanding what's happened to your life. Why won't your children own a home when you were able to buy a home, when your parents bought their council house, when you've been on the up and now you don't know what the future looks like? Yes. I think they're the only people occupying the space of having answers. So when we look at the centre and the centre left, there's a kind of thing that's been happening across Europe where, as these far-right voices occupy the space almost of anti-capitalism, but with strong racism and anti-immigration politics, the left goes to meet them. The centre-left and the centre-right goes to meet them. So we see this with the Conservative Party and the Labour Party in the UK, but it's happened in countries across Europe. Yes. And when they go to meet them, voters are on the centre and left are alienated by that. And voters who might be sympathetic to those far-right parties don't believe them. They don't believe them that they'll do all these horrible things that they say they will. So they don't get the votes. And so what you find is the far-right cannibalising the whole of the right. So that's what's happened to the Conservative Party now. Yes. And it's happened in other countries. It's happening in Germany and in the Netherlands. So you have a situation where you have the centre and you have the far right as the dominant conversations in politics. Yes. And then, as I said earlier, on immigration, everything is on the right and further, and not on the liberal human rights right, but on the keep them out. They're probably going to steal all our jobs and bring lots of diseases kind of right. So I think that's what's been happening. But I'm not an electoral researcher.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about.